back.
29 trillion, is that how many you
All
got?
right.
Weird, huh? Yeah, she's starting to make a lot of progress this way.
Nelson, I don't care what they say, I just want. Sliced bread.
I'm 85.
Well, I am not 85.
See, I told you. Everybody thinks your breakfast is so bad. What the heck, I'm happy to be living that long.
You have 2 minutes to be nice to me.
It's like Lane's gonna go make her left.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to be nice once the meeting starts?
It's really hard for him to be nice to me. Because we used to have coffee at the hospital every morning.
Now she quit.
I quit going, yeah.
So did I. You go anymore?
Yeah, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 o'clock.
Well, if I get my back operated on the hip, I will be back. Can't walk.
Yeah.
My hip became, I've done pretty good tonight getting here, but this morning I walked at the hospital and I about didn't make it.
Know the feeling. 1 more minute.
I think Friday is when they're gonna shoot me.
Friday, they're gonna shoot you in the back. Who's doing it?
Swords. And Dwight, the ex-mayor, had all that done, and he ended up having to be operated.
I've had a shot in the back, 2 of them.
It
About
works.
2017, yeah, it did then. But once it wears off, it's done.
Everybody's got you on the speed dial.
Hi, Freddie.
Got a minute yet?
I do tap the gavel. We'd like to call the meeting to order, the May 31st meeting to order of the North Platte Planning Commission. We'll start with roll call.
Davies. Winder.
Here.
Fudge.
Here.
Dane. Weber.
Here.
McGann.
Here.
Jet,
Here.
Whirl, Forbes, sorry, Forbes. Here. And Whirl.
Thank you.
Okay, quorum is present.
Current copy of the Open Meetings Act of Nebraska is posted at the back of the council chambers. You'll note on your agenda, you have two item number 3s. We will approach them as the first item number 3, and then the second item number 3 when we get to that. At our last meeting, we did not have the minutes of the March meeting, so they were not approved. So let's take a look at the minutes for March.
Do you want separate motions, or do you want to handle
I
it
think
together?
we will do it separately.
Make a motion to approve the March 22nd, 2022 meeting minutes as presented.
There's- Moved by Fudge, seconded by Jet. Roll call, any discussion? Roll call vote. Well, isn't that a roll call? No, it's a clicker. Okay, it looks like Weber hasn't pressed his button yet. Yes, okay. Minutes for March are approved. We have the minutes for April 2022 are in front of you, and you need a motion to approve.
I would move to approve the April minutes.
Second? Moved by Winder, seconded by Forbes to approve the April 2022 minutes. Is there any discussion? Clicker vote. And the minutes are approved as printed. Item number 3, the first item number 3, file number SU 22-009, to discuss and consider action on an application by the Clewine Family Trust for Clewine 4th replat located at 1920 East Phillip in an I-1 Light Industrial District on property described as Lot 2 Industrial Park, 7th replat, North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska. Judy.
You should have all received a copy of the review comments. Attached to that is a copy of the improvements, the preliminary and final plat. City utilities are available to service the proposed lots. However, a petition for paving will be needed to extend paving south on Devco Avenue. Planning staff has no objection to the approval of the preliminary and final plat for replat, provided the petition for paving is completed and submitted to the planning office. The proposed subdivision would then meet zoning and subdivision regulations. I have talked with the property owner. He unfortunately cannot be here this evening. He has just received a copy of the petition for paving that he does have to complete and submit. But other than that, I will try and answer any questions that you may have.
No questions?
Everything's there once it's been paved, right?
Once it's been paved, the water and sewer are there, and if not, he would have to extend that, but he's fully aware of that. But yes, it should be good at that point.
Did I miss the street sign for Devco?
There should be a street sign out there, Devco Avenue.
Yeah, I don't think
Maybe it
it's
got knocked
there.
down.
I don't think it's there unless I wasn't looking.
The city engineer and the public works director are in the audience, so hopefully.
They will
take
check
a
that
look at
out.
that for us.
All right, all right.
Madam Chair, I'd move to approve file number SU 22-009, preliminary and final approval of Clewine 4th replat if a petition for paving has been completed.
There a second?
Second.
I think Mr. Bain beat you to it, Mr. Weber. Okay, moved by Fudge, seconded by Bain, to approve file number SU 22-009. Is there any other discussion or questions? If not, oh, some of you've already voted. Okay.
I put it up a little too soon.
All right. Motion carries. Thank you. And I'll drive by again to see if there's a sign there. All right. We have the second item, number 3. This is a public hearing to discuss and consider action on a resolution regarding the City of North Platte redevelopment plan for the Devco housing project for the real estate described as a tract of land in the southeast quarter of Section 29, Township 14 North, Range 30 West of the 6th PM, Lincoln County, Nebraska, more particularly described as follows. Beginning at the southeast right-of-way corner of Adams Avenue and West 17th Street, Cody Land and Cattle Company, Part 11, thence south 88 degrees 52 feet 46 inches, is that right? Or as I said that wrong? It's minutes. East on the south right-of-way line of 17th Street, a distance of 796.57 feet to the northeast corner of said lot. These continuing south 0 degrees 19 minutes 55 seconds west, a distance of 700 feet to a point on the east line of said lot. Thence north 88 degrees 52 minutes 46 seconds west, a distance of 796.57 feet to the west right-of-way line of Adams Avenue. Then north 0 degrees 19 minutes 55 seconds east on the east line of said right-of-way, a distance of 700 feet to the point of beginning. Said described containing 12.8 plus or minus acres, more or less. Judy.
Okay, you should have all received a copy of the review comments. Attached to that, you will see a copy of the future land use map as it corresponds to the comprehensive plan. Attached to that, then you will see a resolution. Now, I do want to say that there was a typo in that resolution attached to your packet, so you will have one sitting around the table, just the front page that has the correct verbiage. And then you will see attached to that the required exhibits. The City Planning Commission's responsibility in the redevelopment process is to take public comment on whether the real estate described is in conformance with the City of North Platte, and if the project meets or will meet subdivision and zoning regulations and is an overall fit for development of the city. The following statements should be considered and confirmed. The property as presented is located in an area that has been declared blighted and substandard. The property is in conformance with the current City of North Platte comprehensive plan. The project meets or will meet subdivision and zoning regulations. That the development of this property to its full potential is in the best interest of the City of North Platte and the entire region. Again, a copy of the redevelopment plan for the project is attached for your review. The principal purpose of a comprehensive plan is to provide for basic policies that guide the many activities of the city. It is used to help determine investment priorities and guide public and private development. At the same time, a comprehensive plan must be flexible in order to address changing conditions and respond to new situations that cannot be foreseen at the time of adoption. One goal of the current city comprehensive plan is to provide for creation of sufficient housing stock for different types of housing units and cost. The city comprehensive plan lays out actions needed to help increase that housing stock. Those actions include redeveloping underutilized land with a mix of land uses that encourage new housing options and neighborhood services, reduce the number of substandard housing units in the community, create alternative housing options such as senior housing or low to moderate income households, provide incentives for redevelopment areas with substandard housing stock into affordable, safe housing, including housing programs to encourage construction of multifamily rental units, affirm and support fair housing practices in North Platte, and prepare for future growth by extending city infrastructure to areas targeted for development. As presented in the redevelopment plan, the redeveloper intends to acquire vacant property and install infrastructure, paving, water, sewer, stormwater mains for development of a 51-lot residential subdivision for affordable workforce family homes. The redeveloper anticipates creating between 12 and 18 homes per year on the site. The homes will be moderately priced and specifically intended to house working families. The redeveloper expects to engage a housing developer and provide the lots at a price point significantly below market in order to substantially lower the price of housing in the subdivision. The property is currently zoned as an A1 transitional agricultural district. and will need to be rezoned to an R2 dwelling district to allow this development to occur. The proposed rezoning is item number 5 on the current Planning Commission agenda. Planning staff recommends approval of the City of North Platte redevelopment plan for the Devco Housing redevelopment project and passage of the attached resolution. The redevelopment plan is in conformance with the City of North Platte Comprehensive Plan 2011 and meets or will meet current City of North Platte subdivision and zoning regulations, and the property is located in an area that has been declared blighted and substandard. This area is appropriate for housing development as the location is in close proximity to public schools and residential related commercial businesses. The proposed project is redeveloping underutilized land into new housing options, creating alternative housing options, and helping the community prepare for future growth by extending that city infrastructure, all of which are identified in the city's current comprehensive plan. A residential development in this location is a good fit for the area and for the growth and development of the city of North Platte and the entire region.
Thank you. As far as how we're going to do this, this is a public hearing. We value your opinion. We value your input, and we want to hear from you. During public hearings, anyone wishing to speak must first be recognized by the chair, that's me. Once recognized, please come to the podium, state your name and address, and keep your comments as brief as you can. I want to give you time to express what you want to say, but if you start repeating, I may stop you. So that's all I have to say, other than our members are here to listen. We will have a time to discuss and ask questions and so on and so forth. So we're looking forward to your input, your information, and we will listen to you. And we're ready to hear whatever you have to say. So, whoever would like to be first, come to the podium.
Sorry, but my name's Kevin Dancer, and I'm probably the only person that's built a house new in that neighborhood.
Okay, we need your address also.
1605 West 19th Street.
Okay,
I got 2 or 3 good points that I'd like to make. You know, I heard the words again, it's blighted and substandard. The city did that 20 years ago when I was a kid. And I counted today, we got 48 modulars in that neighborhood as a result. That's all we got. And the city did nothing to back that up. They didn't pave any new streets, no sidewalks, wash. So we got more traffic and obviously more people live there. They're pretty well maintained homes, I can't complain. Gonna double that and bring in another 50. The city needs to finish paving the streets in that neighborhood so that the dust is not an issue. If you live on 19th Street or anywhere around there, you know what the dust is. The second issue I have with this is, as a private investor who just spent a sizable amount of money to do my own house, this is unfair competition, and you're cutting it lower than what it could be. You're underselling the potential of that land. You're gonna give it away for less than what it could be. We could have nicer homes over there if that option was available. I think that's about all I got for today. Those two issues are big issues.
okay.
Cars drive east and west, not just north and south. And the cars that drive from Adams go clear to Buffalo Bill, and they drive down 19th Street, and that is certainly affected by any development on Adams.
Okay, thank you.
Gary Pearson, the president of the North Platte Area Chamber and Development Corporation, also commonly known as DEVCO. Madam Chair and Planning Commissioners, I'd like to make a few key points I think it'll help answer.
Can we have an address?
502 South Dewey.
Thank you.
Make a few key points that might answer some of the questions that will surface this evening. This development is being proposed largely because we have it's pretty well documented, a historic low housing inventory in North Platte. We have real estate agents on both our Economic Development Committee and our Chamber Board of Directors. And every month we get a report. In this past year, year and a half, 2 years, we're lucky we have 20 to 30 on the market at any one given time, and 70 to 80 always under contract. So houses don't stay on the market very long. It's largely due to the demand is so much greater than the supply. A normal or healthy amount of inventory for a community our size should be around 125 to 150. That's just a national average. North Platte has a wonderful opportunity to grow our economy and the population base and reverse a 40-year trend of slight decline. All of our peer communities that were of similar size in 1980, and I passed out a chart to show you that, 7 peer communities: North Platte, Fremont, Hastings, Scottsbluff, Gearing, Kearney, Norfolk, Columbus. In 1980, those were all, they're all what you'd call trade center communities, county seat towns that are shopping hubs for their entire regions. Those 7 communities in 1980, the population ranged from a low of 17,000 to a high of 24,509. North Platte was number 1 on that list. We fast forward 4 decades later, and we now rank 7th out of 7. And so those other communities obviously were far more aggressive at housing development and building their economies and building their population. That was directly correlated to what their aggressiveness towards housing occurred. Growth simply will not happen without a community being aggressive in its posturing and making a community housing development friendly. Housing is where jobs live. Mayor Kelleher promised in his campaign to streamline these processes, and we thank him for that commitment. Several of you were on the Planning Commission when we had a housing developer come forward a couple years ago, and the process dragged on for several months, well through an entire construction season, cost the developer entire construction season, and delayed the inevitable, that houses were going to get built. But yet we drug it through a process that was much longer than most communities do. When other developers see those kind of things occur, it's a great deterrent for them to come forward through the same process and take the process for trying to want to do good for a community. We know we've got a lot of potential. We not only have the demand we currently have, but we have a lot of potential jobs that are headed our way. Sustainable Beef went through a 14-month process, 14 public hearings. All of them were unanimous in votes to facilitate and have that project go forward. Our industrial rail park also has as good a potential, if not better, than Sustainable Beef. Those two jobs and the ancillary jobs that will come along with them, those 2 developments and those ancillary jobs and direct jobs that will come with them, have the potential of creating about 4,000 new jobs over the next decade in this community. And we've got 20 houses on the market. We've got to do something about it. So we've been very aggressive at going and talking to housing developers, reaching out to them. The developers that we have here, we're blessed to have a handful of them. They do all that they can to address the problems, but nobody really is building in volumes that we need. We need some supplemental developers to make that happen. So when we reach out to developers, they first 2 things out of the mouth. Well, will the city put the infrastructure in for me? Or will the city approve redevelopment processes and tax income and financing? TIF is creating something out of nothing, creating new wealth in a community. Where if a city had to put all the infrastructure in, you're using existing resources and existing dollars to do it. So our member businesses, 600 member businesses that belong to the Chamber and Development Corporation, they look to us to help resolve this issue where they can't hire people because people can't find a place to live. I hear that story over and over and over every single day. They've hired somebody. They're excited about the job. They're excited about North Platte's future. And they get so frustrated looking for a job, they decide not to take it. and they don't move here with their families. Housing developers want to do what they do best, and that's build housing. So we've come up with a concept that if we were to go through the political process as a Chamber Development Corporation and try to get those lots as cost effective as we can, and there's still gonna be a lot of dollars and cents in getting those put in place. So, okay, at $100,000 a lot. Just to purchase the land, to put the sewer, the water, the streets, the stormwater, go through the platting process and everything associated with it. That's how daunting it is. That's before you spend one nickel building a house. And they also look at the risk. If I'm gonna go through that long tedious process and I have to put 50 to 75 to 100 lots in, that's a great risk that I'm taking, that the community is gonna continue moving things forward. So we thought, if we can do this for developers, reach out to them, try to get the most cost effective we can. And we're still struggling with that. Right now, the cheapest, the most inexpensive house that we've had proposed to be developed is $270,000. We want to try to get down to $250,000 or less if we possibly can for workforce housing. We're doing this out of community spirit. We're not doing this because we've got plenty on our plate, trust me, with all the projects we've nurtured along and we take care of those projects. But we know that somebody's got to do it. And we're just not seeing the private sector willing to step forward and do that. One thing is a given. I mean, I understand the whole thing about people commenting that, you know, we shouldn't be using cemetery land to do this. The city purchased some time ago a great deal of land to be able to grow the cemetery over time. And with the changes in funeral practices and people going to like cremations and so forth, less space is needed. The city staff tells us they're good for another 100 years without this particular property. So if this property is still designated for a cemetery 100 years before it's needed, for 100 years that property will be gaining 0 tax dollars for anybody in the community. It will sit there vacant. It's public property. It will create $0. Or you could have 52 houses there that will generate over that 100 years millions of dollars in property taxes. Probably over 100 jobs will be filled as a result of having 50 additional people there. Those people will make decent wages and decent benefits in order to afford a house, generate millions of dollars in new payroll that will also be turned over in the community. They'll spend their paychecks here, sales tax dollars, and they'll buy vehicles, and those vehicles will create additional property tax dollars. So 100 years of nothing, or 100 years of having a considerable economic impact. That's what you get in return. I also put together, because North Platte has been historically known as not very redevelopment friendly towards TIF projects. I'm just talking from a historic sense. I think in the last few years it's gotten better, and it's been the community has been more receptive to some of the projects that have come along. But I put together a chart showing you those 7 peer communities we talked about. How many active TIF projects? I'm just talking about not all the ones that have been completed over time, but the active ones they currently have still in process that are already in place. Kearney has 41, Hastings 31, Scottsbluff Gearing area 31, Norfolk 24, Columbus 16, Fremont 11, and North Platte 7. Those TIF values of the new value and increment that's being created in those communities range anywhere from a high of $174 million in new projects to the North Platte's low of $14 million of new projects being proposed. What does that represent of the total city valuation? You can see most of them are 2 to 3%, exception of Fremont with the Costco project. They're up around 9% now. North Platte still below 1%. Those communities got more aggressive at doing housing. They got more aggressive at doing commercial. They got more aggressive at doing industrial. And they used TIF as a vehicle to help buy the infrastructure costs down. And as a result, they're growing their economies, they're growing their population, and we're not. That's a tough thing to stand up here and say when you're in charge of economic development, but it's reality, you know, and that's why we've got to change our community's image when it comes to this. We've come a long ways the last 2 or 3 years. We really have. Sustainable Beef, the industrial rail park, being named the governor's 2021 Economic Development Community of the Year. That doesn't happen without that. And you can see this last chart I put together, the number of housing TIF projects in value added to the state of Nebraska that are currently active. You can see in 10 years ago, 2013, $379 million of housing projects that had approved TIF to facilitate those projects, grown to this past year to $826 million of housing. They cannot do housing development and to keep the costs reasonable enough for housing to occur. That's why they've used this vehicle to do it. 2022 is expected to be top $1 billion of new housing projects approved in the state of Nebraska using TIF. So that's why we're proposing what we're proposing. I thought it'd be helpful to have the facts, the statistics that help back it up. I think we can all agree that the need is there. It's just how do we want to facilitate? How do we want to do it? Is this a model that can work? If it's a model that works, we may have to do it again and again and again to help developers help us. So it's not, like I said, that we aspire to do this. We've got enough work to do, but people are looking for us to find solutions. And this is what our committee, our hardworking board, our hardworking Economic Development Committee have put together and to present to you. Granted, City Council still would have to approve it, and they'd have to approve selling the land to have it. Why that particular land? Our committee, you look at our housing study from 20, it showed a disproportionate amount of distressed neighborhoods on the north side of North Platte by a large margin of substandard housing and neighborhoods in need of redevelopment. So we wanted to target the north side to have a spurt of energy into the north side to help facilitate additional development. So then you look at the available lots that are the vacant properties that might be available. The one that stood out, of course, the one that was already blighted. And of course, with the city owning the property, they're probably the easiest landowner to deal with when it comes to understanding that the community needs housing. So that's why it was proposed, and that's why so it brought us to tonight. So, need me to answer questions now or wait till?
Probably later.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
Can I have one more? I work nights, I gotta leave. Quick question and I'll let you have it. The difference of R1 to R2. If they're single-family development, that's the way I understood it, then why the R2?
Judy?
The difference between R1 and R2 allows for smaller sized lot development is basically the difference.
It's not apartments.
It's not apartments,
It's
no,
not
you would have to
not
do an
multi-
R3.
This is strictly not multi.
It could
Yeah, you
potentially
can
be
do
townhouse.
townhouses.
Then it needs to be, you talk about the area being blighted and substandard, we've literally got nothing from the city since I was born. And you're gonna do a disservice to us again. It should be R1. Those houses, that lot is no different from the development on Dixie Avenue. No different. If you
Dixie
can build a
Avenue
nice
is
house
R2.
on Dixie Avenue, you can build a nice house on North Adams.
Dixie Avenue is.
And the
zoned
city
R2.
would be disservicing everybody that lives there to say it any other way. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dixie Avenue is an R2. The development on Dixie is R2. Mr. Bacon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Mike Bacon, 416 10th Street, Gothenburg, Nebraska. I work for the Redevelopment Authority and prepared the plan for this process that is before you. A couple of things I'd like to bring to your attention. One, if the city is unwilling or unable to provide title to this property to Devco, a nonprofit developer, this process will die. So that's not before you at this time. The second piece I would tell you is that I have done somewhere between 250 and 300 TIF projects from Douglas County to Scottsbluff County. Everyone is beating down my doors now to do housing because they cannot build affordable housing. It is so important in the state of Nebraska that on the Blueprint Nebraska process that the whole state has gone through recently, they had a subcommittee on housing to address the housing shortage across the state. And they wanted a statewide initiative to handle that process. Personally, I sat as a member on the subcommittee of the Blueprint Nebraska group, and that was on incentives and tax policy. And one of the things that we decided, real frankly, is that we're short about 500,000 taxpayers in the state, and that we could reduce our taxes if we could get more people to move in and work. I've been involved in economic development as long as, or perhaps longer than Gary Pearson. I have in the past, took the position that if you provide the jobs, the people will come and the housing will come along with it, and you don't need to incent it. I was wrong. You cannot build this community without housing rooftops. It cannot be done. Doing what you are doing now is failing you because you're losing 2,000 people per decade from your community while the others are growing. Grand Island has a TIF project that has generated approximately 300 new homes, and the infrastructure was put in by the developer who built the houses, who sold the houses, and provided over 300 jobs to that community, workers to that community, and that was a TIF project. I will tell you that those houses would not be there without tax increment financing. I have not run into a community yet that can build 51 houses like this side of Lincoln, without using tax increment financing. You have to de-risk the prospect or the builder. If someone commits to come in and build 51 houses, they want to make sure that they're not going to sit there after they put in $1.8 million in infrastructure and watch the interest tick up every day. They want to know that they'll be able to sell those houses, and that's what tax increment financing does. One of the interesting offsets to that people ignore quite often is that the tax basis for your community you would think would go backwards because you're taking not adding property to the tax base. That's not true. Taxes will be paid on the 2 or 3 cars that are going to sit in the driveway. The people are going to spend money for the 2 jobs per house and so forth. So my experience over the 250 to 300 is using TIF projects builds your community, adds workers, and reduces your tax levy. In this case, you may not have reduced the tax levy, but if you add up all the TIF projects that you have had and see what they're pressing down on that tax levy now, you would be surprised. Your taxes would be much higher without the TIF projects. So I'll be glad to answer any technical questions. The request at the end of this process would be to adopt the resolution making a recommendation to the City Council for the redevelopment plan to be approved. I'm glad to answer any technical questions. I've already given you my personal opinion, and I support your community quite a bit because I was just at the popcorn corner, and I got to feed myself before I go home. So I'd like you to lower my taxes. Thank you.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Bacon right now? So he can go spend some more money in North Platte before you leave? Thank you. Okay,
My name is Terry Woods, 902 North Emery. I'm not here to be either for or against TIF. That's not my issue. My issue is that this is cemetery land. And this was set aside hundreds of years ago to be cemetery land. And the city had foresight to add to it so that we had plenty of cemetery for the future. And we have figures that say this is enough to last 100 years. Well, if we're on the cusp of greatness, how do we know what 100 years looks like? You know, how do we know what 10 years looks like? We have all these things coming in, but we don't know what that's going to look like. So it's, as far as planners, I would think that you would want to plan for that future. You don't want to be known as the planning commission that sold off the cemetery ground, and then we had to build another cemetery with duplicate equipment and staff, and you know, it just doesn't make sense. We don't know what kind of people will be moving here, what culture they will be. We don't know what their funeral practices are. Yes, I know that cremation is gained in popularity, but if everybody says that we're going to have more Hispanics in our community and more different cultures, maybe more of them have large families with burial beliefs. I just think it's very short-sighted and ill-advised to sell it for some houses. And yeah, maybe the houses will be great for 50 years, we'll get these houses. What are we gonna make the people move out then if we wanna make the cemetery bigger and plow them down? If you don't like the empty land and the city's not happy with the empty land, turn it into a park. There's not one park on the northwest side of town. So you add 51 more houses. There's still no place for the kids to play. I guess that's all I have to say. I just don't want you guys to be known as the brainiacs that sold the cemetery in '22. So, thank you.
thank you. Yes, sir.
Rick Miller, I live at 1317 West 17th Street, which is a half a block from the corner of the property that you're speaking of. I disagree with the gentleman about it'll be 100 years before the cemetery needs to expand. I think it's going to cost the taxpayers a great deal of money to purchase the same amount of land and then have to redevelop it into cemetery, build a building, the equipment and stuff. The last project out there where I live was across the street from my house where they leveled out the school land over there and planted grass. My kids grew up playing there. They put a fence around it. Now every kid in that neighborhood, they don't even go over there. They're not allowed to. The other thing is, hope I can remember all I was going to say. I think it's going to cost the taxpayers more money than what that land will generate by selling it and having housing projects. I lived in Bridal Acres 45 years now. I was the first house built out there. It was a similar situation. We're going to develop this land. It's going to be fantastic. They put up 12 low-income duplexes. As soon as they put those up, the people who had already said they were going to build houses there, everybody backed out. I was the only house out there for at least 15 years until the land was purchased in behind me and they put 33 modulars in. The other thing is we're already emaciated with low-income housing. If you drive a 6-block radius around my house, you'll at least spot 50 low-income houses, at least 60 trailers, and probably The rest will be stick-built houses. We've gone past what's reasonable. There are too many low-income houses out there already. A lot of the people that live in them are good people, but occasionally we get a few that are into drugs or other type situations, and it just doesn't go well. My property lost value as soon as they put those houses up on 19th Street. The developers at that time backed out. They wouldn't build anymore. The only way the property got sold was Henry Stala purchased it and brought in 33 modulars. That's probably going to happen again. I don't know. The other thing, traffic out there. Between 4 and 7 p.m., the only way you can get onto Rodeo Road now is to go to the light on Adams Street to make a left turn to get on Rodeo Road. I don't know what the traffic's going to be like when the cattle trucks start rolling in. I don't think we'll be able to get on Rodeo Road at all. There's two ways out from that section of land, Jackson and Adams. If you go to Jackson, you're going to sit at a stop sign waiting to get on Rodeo Road. If you go to Adams, you're probably not going to sit as long, but you're going to sit at a stoplight. I don't think the project will accommodate traffic. I feel, and 15 years ago I argued the same point, we're better to leave the land cemetery land. I think it's going to be more cost effective. Plus, if I wanted to, I could get buried a block down the street. I don't want to, but there was some other stuff I was going to bring up, but I need a second to see if I can think. I just feel we're already emaciated over there with low-income housing. If they were going to go in and say, yeah, we're going to go in and put middle-income, stick-built houses, that would be fantastic. But no more low-income houses out there. It's already too bad. I guess that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I just need, saying Terry Woods again. I just have to say Terry Woods, 902 North Emory, just have to say one more thing. I think what your idea is, Gary, and Mike, it's great. It's a great idea. It's a great idea. It's a great idea. I have nothing against their project. I just don't want to do it there. Surely there must be other land in North Platte that we could build this on without doing the cemetery. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you.
Mike Bacon, what's your name?
Hello, Tracy Martinez. I live at 1003 West 9th Street. How are you, Mrs. McGann?
I'm doing fine. Good to see you
I
again.
have not seen you forever. I moved back into my mother's house on West 9th Street. I was born in my mother's bedroom. I was the last baby that Dr. Dross delivered at home. I will go to North Platte Monument where I have picked out my headstone, and they'll throw me in a hole at the North Platte Cemetery. The whole universe of my life is a 6-block area around my birthplace. I don't think it's a good idea to take all the property away from the cemetery. I have 2 sisters that are stillborn from the 40s. Grandpa Bruno's buried there, everybody's there. I like the idea of the city should be growing outwards. You are congesting us. Like, I agree with Mrs. Wood? Yeah. Okay. And Mr. Miller, they say everything right. When I was at the Dixie Street hearing, I said the biggest problem with the TIF is the city council and the mayors have stagnated us. I believe that there's more property out there that should be opened up. And to make it an R2 where it's smaller lots, you need to have them at least a livable lot. Because I don't want the little kids running over and playing in the cemetery and pushing the headstones over. Because that's what they do. And when we did the TIF fund for the DC Center, and Mr. Richard Byer came up there, had me do the commercial, and they were shocked that I was for it. I said, yes, I'm for it. I know they're manufactured all these years. I know 20 people who got jobs out there. The problem is the poor taxpayers of North Platte, they don't trust Devco. And I went with Devco because I seen what the project was, and I knew it was going to be a magnet. Here, Devco would never come up to me with my property that I have that I'm looking to develop and say, we need to develop it. I understand there's a certain group there that is the Devco organization, and they will probably get first pick. More power to them. I think that we should be able to move it farther out. We don't want, I like stick houses, but you know, the new modulars, they're so nice, and I see them coming in there and such. You don't have to have a hard brick and mortar, but just to plug it up there and do it that way. I wish we could move the cemetery over to the Iron Eagle, but we sold that. But I hope you guys don't do that, because I think it's not a good idea. And the property we're talking about, in the layman's term, it's everything north of the cemetery. Is that correct?
That is not correct.
Okay, where is it?
It's in that area.
That area, yes, you're not right up against the fence.
It
You're
would be the north, so it's
clear over on 19th.
It's on 19th
Right.
and Adams.
Okay.
So it's gonna be that northeast corner.
Gotcha,
But it is not the entire parcel.
gotcha, because you're not coming up
It's a
to,
portion
you're not
of
coming
it.
up to the golf course property.
We're not, yes, it
Yeah,
is
it's going all the way east, gotcha, okay, that's why I want to get the bearings.
Does not go all the way south to.
I'm
the
disappointed you don't have a map out there someplace, because you know.
There is a map that we can pull up.
Okay,
if you
I
wanna
appreciate
look
it.
at
All right, thank you. You have a nice day.
Thank you.
All south of the drainage ditch, correct?
It's south of the drainage,
Or north, I'm sorry, north of the drainage ditch.
north
So
of the
we're
drainage.
maintaining,
Would you like me to put a map up
I know where it's
on the
at.
TV?
For them, maybe.
Would you like to see the map up?
Yes, if you could, yeah, that'd be fine.
Patiently waiting. What's that is? Is this supposed to be, was this supposed to be here? Yes, no, maybe so.
That's the agenda. So here is Washington, you can see right here. This is 17th. And there's Adams on the west side here. And then this is only a little over 12 acres. So the remaining property to the south that you can't see on this map, but to the south, this is still cemetery-owned property or city-owned property, which is about another 12, 13 acres down there. Okay?
So Judy, does that mean it's taking about half, if I come down Adams? We've
Do you
got
have
the
an
end
area?
of the cemetery, and then
It's
you
where that
have,
canal is, that
So
little
it's-
creek.
North
Yeah.
of the drainage
It's,
ditch.
it's, yeah,
It's coming down to about, in between 18th and 15th, so you're looking at maybe 16th, 17th Street.
about 16th or 17th Street?
right.
To the drainage canals.
Yeah, to the drainage canal.
Because the drainage comes across.
Right.
Okay, I think we're ready for you.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and Planning Commission. My name is Rita Hernandez. I live at 2121 West 9th, former City Council, 4th Ward, my district we're talking about. What I'm for housing, totally for housing. The thing that bothers me is we're disrespecting, I feel, the people that we put in the ground. I used to work at Fort McPherson's National Cemetery about 4 years ago, excuse me. And they anticipated not needing more ground. Well, look at now. And all that is cremation. That when you enter the first drive area of Fort McPherson, not the main area, but that was just barely getting full. I drove out there for Memorial's Day to take my parents their flowers, and that whole north side is getting full. So what they've had to do is purchase land. So 100 years, I don't think any of us are going to be around by 100 years. At least I'm not. Tracy Martinez and I have always joked about, we're going to have them walk our body down to the North Platte Cemetery because we live so close. We didn't leave our area. We're pretty much devoted to North Platte. So I feel that by selling cemetery land is a bad idea for the people that we are putting in the ground. Also, North Platte is making money off of those dead bodies because we are selling plots. They're selling the plots. So it might not be taxed. We're not gonna, have tax on plots, but we're still making money. North Platte is. And also, the housing that we're going to put there, I believe that we haven't did our homework yet, although I have. I've been, ever since they have talked about sustainable beef, I have been doing my homework. And as I talk to my council members that are around, I said, we don't know what race, ethnic, who we're going to get here. But in contacting some family members that are also beef packers, they said they recruit foreigners, not only Mexicans, no, but they recruit foreigners. I have had, and if you'd like to see it, is an incentive for $800 for recruitment to a foreign country. So that's where they're coming from, foreign countries. The majority of the management will be United States people here in the United States. But, correct me if I'm wrong, Judy, but I remember sitting right there on council, and Mr. Brewer, Jerry Brewer and Lois Brewer, were objecting to the road, I believe it was Francis that was going to go through. They could not sell that because the city of North Platte wanted to go through them because it was cemetery property, his cemetery property. So by selling this property that is supposedly being proposed for cemetery, can we do that? Thank you. Also, I don't know if anybody got this, but Mike sent out a flyer. 100 years, we might have more people in the cemetery. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Thank you. Okay, next.
Ed Reeker, I live at 916 North Emory Avenue. Commission members, Madam Chairman, I've never spoken at a planning commission before, so this is kind of a breakout session for me, I guess. But Judy, you mentioned that in your initial comments that it has to work into the overall fit of the community, I believe is the term that you used. And there was another part of your comments that said cannot be foreseen at the time of adoption, which I take that to mean that there may be something that occurs in the future that we can't foresee right now. One of the things that I would reiterate probably what's already been said about giving up cemetery land. Maybe I shouldn't worry about it. I'm probably not going to be buried here anyway. But regardless of that, and what Gary said, I believe, as far as the projections for development in North Platte and the area, if Gary's projections are anywhere close to right, in 10 years, we could be a community of 35,000, maybe 40,000. That sounds like a huge increase, and it is, percentage-wise. It's a tremendous increase, and I have to give Mr. Pearson a lot of credit because he's worked very diligently and very hard to bring these industries to our community. And that, I think he's done a yeoman's job in that regard. And I'm not against housing. I know we have a shortage of housing. There's no doubt in my mind. I'm just not convinced, first of all, that this is the place to put it. If we get up to that 35 and 40,000 population, now the whole equation has changed as to how long this existing property is going to be available for a cemetery, because people get old and die and they need to be buried. And so from my perspective, I think it's very short-sighted to sell this property for housing. Somebody made a comment about maybe making it into a park. I think that would be an excellent idea. We've got children on the north side too, and there's no place for the children to play there. It could be made into a park temporarily, and at such time we need it for burial, then it could be transformed into a cemetery. But short term, it could certainly be used as a park for the children. As far as, I wasn't going to talk about TIF, I guess, but it's been talked about, so I'm going to talk about it now. Somebody else broke the ice, Marilyn.
I'm very, very sorry. It won't happen again.
You're among friends, Mike. I don't know if I didn't know this until about a week ago. I get a publication from the Platte Institute, and they study the taxes in our state. Right now, Nebraska's 38th highest tax state in the nation. That's a very dubious honor. In fact, I wouldn't call it an honor. We say there's no cost to the people when we sequester the money that would have gone to the various taxing entities through TIF. But I'm getting kind of old, and I realized a long time ago there's no Santa Claus. The money that would have gone to the taxing entities and instead goes back to the developer, that money's not available to repair the streets that have been in service for 15, 20, 25, 30 years. The sewer and water lines that get old and break, that money that would have been used to fix and repair and replace those has gone to the developer. There are costs associated with tax increment financing. Admittedly, the taxing entities do recover the basic initial value of the property and the tax assessed to it. And so if the property value increases, then the tax value would increase as well. And I understand that. But that money that would have been generated, that would be generated and given back to the taxing entities is gone. And it's gone for maybe 15 to 20 years, depending on the life of the bond. We don't know what's going to happen in 15 to 20 years. We've got a lot of growth ahead of us. We have opportunities to spend more money in our community, which I'm not going to get into that tonight, but we have to be careful about how we spend our taxpayers' money. And it is taxpayer money. A comment was made, I think, by Mr. Pearson that wants to get the houses in the $250,000 range. Is that right, Gary?
That's what we hope to do, but
Okay.
it doesn't appear that way as president.
Okay.
Well, it's anything but low-income housing and water and
Right, and I would agree with that. But I think you also said that the developer will sell below the market value. I find that very hard to believe, quite frankly. I'm not calling anybody a liar or questioning anybody's integrity. But I can't imagine that if a developer has a house that has a market value of $300,000, that he's gonna sell it for $250,000. I find that really, really hard to believe. A comment was made about how North Platte fell behind in housing. When I ran for city council, I looked at the the household income, and I compared Columbus with North Platte. Now keep in mind that's been 5 years ago now, but the household income in Columbus was $52,000. The household income in North Platte was $41,000. That is a huge disparity. We're on the cusp of making tremendous gains in our community because of, as Gary mentioned, sustainable beef and the rail park. I maintain that we didn't have housing development because we didn't have jobs. You can't pay the mortgage on a house if you don't have a job. But we're going to have some good jobs in our town. And I think we need to let the market work things out instead of getting involved, have the government getting involved in subsidizing this. So I think I've probably said enough. I hope I didn't step on your toes too hard, Mike. But nonetheless, I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Planning Commission members, thank you for allowing us to speak. Brandon Jones, 2115 Birchwood Road. I also sit on the Chamber Board of Directors. I guess I'm up here just to address a few of the comments that have came from the public. I think Gary just said it as well. This is definitely not low-income housing. This is workforce housing. What I guess I call low-income housing is something that's subsidized to rent value. This is to be owner-occupied housing is the intent. Whether an investor buys it, we don't know, but it's not to be a subsidized rental unit. Somebody addressed there's been a lot of comments about the land. The intent of the group would be to buy the land at appraised value, not undercutting anything. Of the land that's going to be purchased, that leaves about 10 acres for future cemetery development. The land that we're talking about is for future use. It's not part of the existing cemetery. Talked to someone in the city. They said that you get about 1,000 plots per acre of ground. We leave at least 10 acres for future development. North Platte is currently averaging about 30 burials per year. We also talked to a funeral director who said that there was ample space there after doing this. On the TIF, the money, the TIF financing would only be used for infrastructure and land acquisition. It's not vertical TIF. It's only there to put in the public infrastructure, road, sewer, water, storm. The land was chosen because, one, it was blighted and substandard. Someone saw it long ago, needed it. It currently has a 0 value. So everything the increment would go towards. And based on all the numbers we ran, this project will not happen without TIF. Even with TIF, it doesn't make sense for a developer to do it. There's no profit, there's no margin, there's nothing left by the time all the costs are done. So it was just a few points that I had seen from the comments of the public and wanted to address them. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Tracy, before you come up, is there anyone else who wants to speak? Who has not already spoken?
Quit.
All right.
Real quick,
Identify yourself again.
Tracy Martinez. Mrs. McGann, you would have been proud of me when we did the ribbon cutting at the DC Center. Mr. Bacon, I went up there to remake the commercial because I really want TIF to go good. I really want, and you know, I want TIF to go.
Okay, you're speaking to
I'm
us,
sorry,
not them.
I'm sorry,
Come
sorry.
on.
When I was just gonna stand at the back of the room and not bother him because they said I had to go to this thing. So I showed up there, so then they see me, they drug me up and they set me in front of Governor Johans. You would have been proud of me. And when we got done, Governor Johans went up and we talked, and I said, this is what we need TIF for the DC Center. I said, everybody who I know is against it, but I'm for it. because it's a magnet. You would not believe the sales taxes that we are getting through the DC Center and the truck stops and stuff like that. The TIF on the north side would be a magnet to bring people in too, and I understand that. But I want the residents there and not a developer to go up there. And they're talking about developing the first part, then if everything rolls through good, they're gonna go around the corner. Well, nobody wants to spend $200,000 to live on the north side of town. And you want to have normal, and everybody's home on the north side of town is their mansion. More power to them like that. I'd like to see TIF to go in there and help people go up there. But like I said, you're boxing us in that corner. You're jamming people in there and everything. You need to make it so it moves outside more. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? 10, 9. Rita, do you want to come back up?
One thing, or a couple of things, I'm sorry.
Identify yourself again, please.
Rita Hernandez.
Thank you.
Do I have to give my address again? Somebody might come, you know.
You got it? No, you're good.
Thank God. The other thing I wanted to say, I'm nervous when I'm here. When I'm there, I'm not. The shot in the arm, why wasn't this developer willing to come when they had the shot in the arm grant? The other thing is, Mr. Nelson, you know, you're so cute. You know that the housing market is not the 200 above on the north side. And usually, from what friends of mine say, they don't try to go on the north side to sell homes. Although my daughter had sold her own house, which was previous McGann's, and got a fairly good price for it, only because it has history. And so I was also wondering why the sale was of one individual when I could have stated to my nephew, Justin Hernandez, who is developing the mall, possibly to be a developer there. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think what might
Would
make
you
it
give us your
easier-
name again, please?
Rick Miller.
Okay, thank you.
I think what might make it easier for the people to take is if the developer put down on paper exactly what size house he's going to put in there. He can present and put covenants, as he suggests, about what can be done with that land, guaranteeing that no house would be put in there that didn't meet that standard. I have 2 other lots out there, which I know that can be done because they told me I can do it. So tell us what size house is going to be there. Present a paper that says the covenants that you're going to have on that land, and prove to us that you're going to put houses in there that aren't going to deteriorate the neighborhood. I recently, after my wife's death, talked with a realtor about selling my house. This particular person drove around the neighborhood and told me, if your house was on the south side, $180,000 easy. But location, 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 you might be able to get $120,000 for it. That's what we don't want. If he's going to come in and develop, he's going to put decent houses in there, stick-built houses, prove it to us. Don't come in, buy the land, and oh, I decided I'm going to put up 12 more low-income houses because I need the money. We don't want that again. We already had it once. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mark Woods, 902 North Emery. I'll try to make it brief. TIF has a fairly long history here, and everybody says we had more TIF projects, we'd be doing better. I've always wondered, you know, I come to these meetings and I've been known to speak against TIF. And I remember maybe one a year. Well, why don't more people try to do TIF here? Because the council always passes them. I mean, the only one they turned down was over there on Sugarberry and couldn't afford to build it without TIF, but yet within 30 days he was building homes. There are people who can build homes and make money. And I honestly believe that TIF is not for housing. And it's the other thing. This was all done and within the chamber, and one guy gets a chance. Yeah, why wasn't this land and this opportunity put out for auction so that some of the other developers in town could have, you know, put their hand into it? Maybe they would have done it without TIF and built something. You know, it just seems kind of insular that, you know, it just, as far as I've always known, that's the way business is done. So I'll leave it at that. Most everything else has been said.
Thank you.
I'd just like to clarify, Gary Pearson, 502 South Dewey, just want to clarify that we do not have a written agreement with any housing contractor at the current time. We're negotiating with several, and it may be a situation where several might be involved in purchasing different lots. We were hoping to find one that would do the whole thing because they can do it more economical if you do it in volume, and that's still in play. But we haven't closed the door to anybody. We'll talk to anybody.
That's good.
Yeah, and so it's all about trying to find a model that will work, that will help spur additional housing development here, bringing additional contractors that then find the market is one of value here in North Platte, so we can keep them here and keep going.
Gary?
And so, yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, yeah, but I just thought I should say that, you know, some of the initial discussions was we were hoping to have an agreement with a modular home developer because they could have the quality control and move it on site and not deter other contractors from continuing to also build here. But we can't, the price point, we haven't reached the level that we were hoping yet, so.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bacon?
Mike Bacon, 416 10th Street, Gothenburg, Nebraska. I've lived long enough and been involved with TIF long enough that I had a conversation with one of the state senators who is now deceased, who was in the state legislature when TIF was passed and approved. And I was listening to his conversation with another senator who'd been along when TIF was approved. And the comment that I heard and has been etched in my mind is that we didn't do TIF for commercial, we did TIF for housing. TIF for housing. That was the conversation. And I have reviewed the original testimony when TIF was in front of the state legislature, and you find very few references to commerce, but you find almost all of the references to housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
I didn't plan on talking, but I'm going to. Cassie Condon, 3020 West Phillip, Chamber and Development, Vice President of Operations. I'm also going to be here as a former North Side resident. I grew up on Jackson Lane, the very farthest side of Jackson Lane, the top side of the cul-de-sac. It's actually why I named my eldest son Jackson. So As a former North Side resident, I understand what it means to be a North Side resident, but I loved living on the North Side. So I understand some of the comments that are coming from here and coming from social media. I've watched them, and I've communicated with our board, communicated with Gary about them. North Side is not the bad side. North Side versus South Side versus East Side versus West Side. I don't understand it. We're all North Platte. We need to all come together. We all need housing. We've been creating all of these projects in North Platte to grow North Platte. Gary created this chart today about where we've been and where we've had the last 40 years. We need to stop this decline. We're creating all these projects to start growing North Platte. We need housing to have the jobs, to have them live. So I know there's been some comments about where we need to create these houses and where they fit within the sector and where they're going to be fit within North Platte. These comments don't exist just within the fine walls and within our offices. We talk about them all over North Platte. We're not just making sure that one side of North Platte grows and the other side doesn't. So we thought about this for months and months and months. And we're just trying to make sure that all of North Platte grows equally. So please make sure to think about that as well. So from a former North Side resident that's also lived on East Side, South Side, and now West Side, that's all I got.
Thank you. Donna?
I too wasn't going to speak tonight, but here I am. Donna Tryon, 802 South Bryan. I guess about the TIF, I think everybody knows that I'm not too much for TIF. It started in California in 1959, and I can't exactly say it's been a benefit to California. So I would really like for us to get back to the free enterprise supply and demand. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Before I call for a motion, do any of you have any questions for the people who are here? Okay. Then I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Fudge, seconded by Winder to. We're looking at a blank screen.
I'm hoping it'll change.
Ooh.
There we go.
Ooh.
Now we see Buffalo Bill.
Are we ready for the vote now?
Yes, we are ready for the vote. Okay, the public hearing is closed on this issue, and now it's time for us to discuss. Is that not right?
That is correct.
I thought that was what
I do want
next.
to remind all of you that since the public hearing is closed, you may talk amongst yourself. You can ask me questions. We do not entertain the audience unless you clear it with the chairperson, and she can do that, but we would prefer everybody to talk here. I just want to run through, and I'm not going to read it all again, but I just want to run through
Yeah,
with
good idea.
what your responsibilities as a planning commission are. I know you've heard a lot of things out there. Your responsibility is to make sure that the property presented is located in a blighted and substandard area. You need to make sure that the property is in conformance with the current City of North Platte Comprehensive Plan. The project meets or will meet the subdivision and zoning regulations, and the development of this property to the full potential is in the best interest of the City of North Platte and the entire region. I can answer as many questions as I can. You guys can discuss yourself. Yes, sir.
If my rudimentary map-making skills,
This is not the greatest map, but that is what I have from the comprehensive plan. We need to do an update and get a better one.
so two questions on what I'm holding up here. One is this has been designated for housing for a period of time. Is that not correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
The comprehensive plan was completed back in 2012, I believe. So yes, it has been designated as housing.
Okay, so the second question I have is based on this And based on what I saw inside this, and based on where the creek roughly lies, that is more or less where the line is going to be.
Pretty close. That is pretty close. Yep.
So we still have the area which would be south of that lot line for future cemetery expansion, even though this comprehensive plan says we're going to put housing there.
That is correct.
Okay.
The plat drawn in is on just a little more than half.
Just a little bit more than half, yes.
So does that mean that if that south half that we're not dealing with, up to the cemetery, up to the housing, that part there, in the comprehensive plan, that's housing?
Yes.
So
that is correct.
if the cemetery needs to expand, they'd have to come here
Do an amendment.
and
to
do
the
an amendment to the
comprehensive-
comprehensive plan.
That is correct.
Okay.
I was trying to get it out of that in a roundabout way.
And when was the substandard and blighted study?
Oh, for this property,
Yes.
that
Long
was
time
a
ago.
long time ago.
Yeah, before me.
I should have probably researched that, but that was a long time ago.
And as far as developers getting the word out, I haven't really seen anything published.
This has been published now in the, newspaper, of course. This is public also, so if developers wanna contact Gary, I'm sure he's very open to talking with whomever.
Yes, sir.
Can I ask some questions of Lane? Please?
Please. Yes, you may.
Hi,
Would you
Lane.
come to the podium, please? And do we need identification or anything like that, since it's not? Oh, sure. Name and address, I guess.
Lane Groseth, 1201 West Phillip, Public Works, Public Service, and Interim City Administrator.
It's a lot.
A little bit.
There was quite a few comments made about cemetery capacity. I want to deal with that because
Okay.
I think that's a valid concern. What
Currently, the cemetery that is now existing with the existing roads, it's fenced in, basically what we consider the cemetery. There's roughly a little over 2 acres, 2 to 2.5 acres left to develop there. In the last 5 years, we've seen around 28 full burials a year, 30 to 40 ash burials, and in the columbarium, that's kind of been the trend, which those trends come and go. You know, the cemetery originally started 150 years ago, right at 150 years, and it's, I think we're at 18 acres developed roughly in that area. Going practice for cemeteries is anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200 plots per acre. You can do double burials, some different things, but that's kind of the going rate. You know, even if we tripled how many burials we're doing a year, we'd still have over 100 years on with that 10 acres, 10 plus acres north, plus the 2 plus that we have still to develop in the part with roads. So
What does that creek running through that 10 acres do for burial plots? That can't be.
we don't go right up against that. I mean, you probably out of that 10 acres would probably develop maybe 8.5 of those acres because you have roads and the creek and stuff in there, fence, et cetera.
Rodeo road access. You put 50 more houses in that area, you're going to have more traffic coming up. Adams there, I believe, is the street on the.
Right, Adams and Rodeo Road has a light.
I think there's a trip on that light at Rodeo Road and Adams where you have to pull up to it, and sometimes it's kind of like staging for a race. You have to kind of get right into the right spot. I mean,
The controls on that are to stay green on Rodeo Road unless someone pulls up on Adams on either the north or south side is how that trips to keep traffic flow.
so if you added a bunch more traffic over there, you could convert that into a normal.
There's different ways you can use radar, you can use just time controlled, et cetera. There's different ways you can control lights depending on traffic volume.
And the other concern I heard was 19th Street. I suspect that's more complicated than just going in there with a cement truck.
normal paving districts are normal streets paving by the lot owners. And so anyone that is on a gravel street today can petition for a paving district to have those paved with the costs assessed to the property owners. That's normal how it's done. You have to have more than 51% of the property owners along a street request and approve that, to get it done, and then it's assessed per, lot footage basis on the cost of the road.
My-
On the front footage.
Front footage, correct.
But my point is, the city just doesn't have the
It's-
arbitrarily go in there and do that. You have to be asked to go do that, correct?
Correct.
All right.
And I'd love to pave every street in town that's still gravel. It's just, normal practice, and this is not just North Platte, this is normal practice about municipalities, is the property owners pay for that, and they get assessed, usually over a 10-year assessment to pay for that property.
And it does have to be petitioned for by a landowner.
Correct. The city can't force that on people.
That was
so-
my question.
That was what I was trying to get at. I want to put that out there that if anybody that lives along there could start that process, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That was my
Thank you,
question.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Could I ask Mr. Pearson a question? Mrs. McGinn?
Yes, sir?
Gary, would you yield to a question?
Sure.
Could you speak to why this property? That was a concern brought up too. We could put it somewhere else potentially. Why this property? Why this piece of land for the
Well,
chamber aspect?
Part of it was, and you heard that messaging tonight, we wanted to do something for the north side to help revitalize neighborhoods. 2018 study showed there's more distressed housing on the north side of the community than anywhere else. So a new housing subdivision certainly energizes everything around it. It'll add enhanced value to the north side image. Having the golf course as a neighbor, is a nice attribute for a housing developer as well. And it came down to trying to find available properties within the incorporated city limits. And this one in particular, as David pointed out with the Planning Commission, was designated for housing. It's already blighted. That just saves us 4 months an entire construction season, having not to have to commission a study and go through that whole process. So we don't lose a construction season in the process. And this just checked all the boxes. The only negative was the fact that it was perceived to be for cemetery expansion. But I think the Planning Commission of 10 years ago obviously looked at it, this is an ideal location for housing, and put it in your comprehensive plan as so stated. So that's all the reasons why we did it. And the fact the city owned it, a lot of times the city's going to be more in tune to selling it at an appraised value as somebody that's going to inflate the cost because they know that housing development is so scarce, and finding proper places to build it's not easy.
Thanks, Gary.
Yep.
The only other thing I was gonna bring up was,
Can I-
oh, go ahead, yeah.
Can I ask Gary a question?
Sure, he hasn't sat down
Was there any
yet.
consideration to any park area within the site?
Well, as any housing, that's the attractive thing about being near a school, because you have the soccer fields over there and kind of a play area, and you're not that far from Cody Park. I mean, there's a huge park system right there, and parks are expensive to maintain too, so you don't want to duplicate it everywhere you can, but there'll be green space, and probably using the drainage way, for some of that, but those were the considerations that made it attractive too. I talked to the superintendent of schools, felt it's an ideal place for additional housing. He was 100% in favor of it and thought it was a great idea. And so, every developer will look at a housing development, and if you add more park space in there, yeah, it's an attraction, but it's also, you're not utilizing every square inch to try to make your development cost effective. And it's it's more expensive than it ever has been in anybody's lifetime right now to try to put infrastructure in. That's why TIF becomes all that much more critically important for housing developers. I don't think you'll see housing developers build anything under $400,000 without TIF going forward in the state of Nebraska. It just is not gonna happen. And this will say, when you talk about the price of housing, if we could get a developer, the lot, we're just trying to break even on the deal. And any developer would look at our numbers and say we're crazy for doing this. But all that cost savings will go directly back to that person buying the house. Because there's so much in the construction costs, and you always add your lot costs and all your infrastructure to that. If we can make that nominal, that entire cost goes back to benefit that particular homeowner.
Okay, thank you.
And I appreciate Jeff bringing that up, because that's something that, of course, I'm extremely passionate about, and I've actually had some conversations with Gary on, is that green space. And making sure we're building community and building neighborhoods for families where young families want to be. You know, I don't want to build a neighborhood where people are just hoping to move out of there. And as far as, you know, Madison Middle School, the schools, you can't get on, you know, campus when it's during the school day. There isn't a playground for young people in that area even close. And when you look at Cody Park, you're traversing the highway there. And so, you know, I agree with Jeff. It's like, what can the city be doing to potentially get some green space? And when we were doing the community-built playground, we heard from people who live on the north side of town, why are we doing anything at Centennial Park? There's no parks up on the north part of the community. So I thoroughly appreciated everyone's talking points, I guess, moving on a little bit here on what people said. And I love hearing people's passion for North Platte, and that we want to see like great neighborhoods and place, you know, and it is a great community to live. But yeah, I mean, I think looking at it's the concern about the home density and like how, you know, tight these are, and then the TIF piece of it of, you know, will this neighborhood raise itself out of the blighted and substandard? You know, like, will we be building a neighborhood that we can look at in 50 years and say like, yeah, this was worth that TIF funding? But on the other hand, like, I do understand the predicament we're in with not having houses for people to live in. I mean, this is a major issue. So
And the increasing
like,
cost of development. I think it's a
absolutely.
great place for TIF. I think it's a great place for development. But there are questions that will arise and people that will agree and disagree.
Right, it could be extremely exciting to have $275,000 homes that are, you know, built there versus a vacant lot.
So, and I think if we can keep the price point down, we all know values are a little less. I do not think that the values are less as what was stated. I do see values rising across town and less of a difference from south to north. I see a total difference. There's been increasing values on the north side for the past 10 years. So it's not as detrimental as it used to be, because there has been a lot of homes fixed up and that will carry their value.
And of course, you put a development like this over there, that'll,
I think it'll help.
yeah,
Yep.
I agree.
I got one question. It might be a stupid question. Does it?
No stupid
No
questions.
such thing.
I mean, because everybody's saying this was designated for the cemetery. If it is designated residential, where are we getting that it was designated for the cemetery?
I don't-
Just because the city
100
owns
years
it?
I don't think most people realized that in the comprehensive plan, that is not designated for a cemetery. That's designated for housing.
I mean,
because-
when the city purchased it, there was nothing stating that we're purchasing this to add on to our cemetery if needed. So that's what my question is. Why is,
That would have been a question
we
that
see it.
probably, I don't know when the cemetery was purchased, I probably wasn't even born at the time, I guess. So at that time, the comprehensive plan was not as established as it is now. You are supposed to update a comprehensive plan about every 5 to 10 years. And comprehensive plans are made to be changed over time, because as a community grows, then you change update, because something that may have been identified as an industrial area maybe has changed over the years to be more of a residential type area. So that's kind of what happened here. Back in 2012, when we went through, and I don't think
I was
you
here.
were here. So, one of you was here at the time. Dawn would have been here. But at that time, we went through and looked at the residential trends and the trends to where things were expanding, how they were expanding. And at that time, the planning commission felt that this was just a great location for additional residential development. It was land that was inside city limits, that had access to infrastructure, that could very well be utilized for additional housing. So, I mean, housing's been on the mind of planning commission and everybody for years. And so that's how that was designated. The reason people think it was purchased for the cemetery was, initially it was purchased for the cemetery. But as time changes, things change.
One real quick, I heard a number the other day that made me shudder, and maybe Gary would know this. And I think Ty Lucas is actually the one that said it, that we expect to need 1,000 units.
Are you asking Gary to come?
Yeah, Gary, is that a correct number?
I think that is a noble goal, you know, to get 1,000 new units, within a reasonable time frame over the next decade. You look at, the current inventory in town, and it's, you know, I'll probably be off trying to say this, but I'm thinking it's in the, 16,000 housing unit range for the community now. I've got the housing study with me, I can look it up, but yeah, I think, that's, if we want North Platte to grow, if we want to take advantage of the economy in front of us, if you keep building houses, people will come here to live. And we're seeing that accelerate in popularity ever since the pandemic. Rural communities are becoming the place to go again, and to raise families, and to get away from the hustle and bustle and the high price of the Front Range. That's why you don't see houses staying on the market. They're not all local jobs. They're people coming from other communities. People can work remotely. If you have an attractive community, the only thing that's gonna stop you is yourself and your hindrance on your ability to build additional housing.
Thanks, Gary.
We talked a lot about the cemetery. I want to reiterate what Mr. Jones brought up too, that the chamber's already looked into a little bit of this, and we average 30 funerals or burials at the North Platte Cemetery a year. I drove out to Floral Lawns, I think last week, after we got our packet. The place is expanded. I read the obituaries in the Telegraph and the Bulletin quite often. There's a lot of people that aren't even getting buried in town. They're doing some of our rural cemeteries too, so. I think it's a legitimate concern, but the chamber already did the homework for us and talked to a mortician too, so.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'd move to approve the resolution recommending approval of the City of North Platte redevelopment plan for the Devco Housing Redevelopment Project and approval of related actions.
Second.
Moved by Fudge, seconded by Jet. Any other discussion? Clicker vote. Motion carries. Okay,
Thanks for all the input.
appreciated, much appreciated. All right. If I can find my agenda, we'll go to the next item. Just that first part. Okay, item number 4 is a public hearing to discuss and consider action on a resolution regarding the City of North Platte amended redevelopment plan for a portion of the Twin Rivers Industrial Park for the real estate described as attractive land in the southeast quarter of Section 15, Township 13 North, Range 30 West of the 6th Prime Meridian, Lincoln County, Nebraska, more particularly described as what is on your piece of paper.
Chicken.
Judy said I could do that. Okay, Judy.
So you all received a copy of the review comments. Again, attached to that, you're gonna see a copy of the North Platte future land use map as shown in the comprehensive plan. a resolution then that does give the entire legal description of the property. And then also a redevelopment plan. The city planning commission, and I know you guys are getting very tired of me doing this, but I do wanna make sure that we understand what our responsibilities are again, is to take public comment on whether the real estate described is in conformance with the North Platte Comprehensive Plan, and if the project meets or will meet subdivision and zoning regulations, and is an overall fit development for the development of the city. Again, please look at the statements that should be considered and confirmed while you're looking at this and listening to public comment. The property as presented is located in an area that has been declared blighted and substandard. The property is in conformance with the current City of North Platte Comprehensive Plan. The project meets or will meet subdivision and zoning regulations, and development of this property to its full potential is in the best interest of the City of North Platte and the entire region. I'm not going to run through the principal purpose of a comprehensive plan again because it is the same as the last one. It is used as a guide. As presented in the redevelopment plan, the redeveloper intends to add additional developable area to the park by expanding sanitary sewer, water, storm sewer mains, paved streets, and electrical infrastructure. Development has been stymied in the industrial park due to a lack of infrastructure. Expanding the infrastructure will encourage private investment in the redevelopment area and contribute to the economic well-being of the city. Planning staff recommends approval of the City of North Platte amended redevelopment plan for a portion of the Twin Rivers Industrial Park redevelopment project and passage of the attached resolution. The redevelopment plan is in conformance with the North Platte, Nebraska Comprehensive Plan 2011 and meets or will meet the current City of North Platte subdivision and zoning regulations, and the property is located in an area that has been declared blighted and substandard. This area is appropriate for industrial uses by providing direct access to Highway 30 and I-80 without disrupting residential or commercial areas of the community. Additionally, industrial development is in this location is a good fit for the area and for future growth and development of the City of North Platte and the entire region.
Okay, I think all of you were here for the previous public hearings, so you know the rules. Whoever would like to be first, Mr. Pearson.
Yep. Gary Pearson, President, North Platte Area Chamber and Development Corporation, 502 South Dewey. Just as was explained, our hope is to expand the infrastructure at the business park. It's critically important for a community to have a shovel-ready business park. In order for North Platte to be considered for any request for a proposal that come to the state of Nebraska through the Department of Economic Development, a lot of times through a third-party broker or a utility provider, it must have a what's called a community-controlled owned business park that is shovel-ready. Shovel-ready means the infrastructure's been in place. You can purchase the land, get a building permit, and start your project. K&M Distribution, Tire Distribution is a perfect example of that. Company out of Ohio, looking throughout the Midwest to find a place for a new distribution center to service tire dealers all over the area. They saw our shovel-ready business park on their website. They flew out here in miserable weather, and Brandon and I met them on the plane, took them out there, showed them the property. In 30 days, we had a deal. They needed to react quickly and fast. If we couldn't have delivered, they would have went right down the road to another community. You can't be a certified economic development community if you don't have a community-controlled business park. We would never have got the Economic Development Community of the Year designated by Governor Ricketts had we not had a business park like this. For 15, 16 years, the park didn't develop very well. We completely changed the marketing on how we sell North Platte out there to the world. And in the last 2 years, we've had 13 new warehouse commercial buildings built out there. We're to the point where we have one road in, egress, and ingress and egress, and they have to find a way to turn around to go back out on the same road. We want to build a road that goes east-west to another connecting north-south road. And then extend the utilities along with that at the same time. And there is a map if you need to see it. I know you have one in your plan, but if you need other people to see it. It's properly zoned. It is blighted. The west half of our property that we still own in the business park is not blighted. So the road would be put in a blighted area, so it qualifies, and everything built on the east side of it would qualify for TIF. Everything built on the west side, even though it would have benefited from the infrastructure getting in there, we're not eligible to recapture that increased value. We know with talking about sustainable beef and the rail park, there's gonna be a lot of ancillary businesses looking for locations. We make sure if we get an RFP and we put in a proposal, we host a company that selects us as one of those sites that they'll look at. We make sure they know there are several other properties in North Platte for them to look at. And a lot of times we'll show them those properties because this was not conducive for everyone, but it gets our foot in the door with those companies. We can't have our foot in the door if we don't have a community-controlled business park.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Madam Chair and council member, commission members. My name is Mike Bacon, 416 10th Street, Gothenburg, Nebraska. Prepared this plan on behalf of the Redevelopment Authority. It calls it an amended plan because it takes into account about 30 acres of the last plan that was put together there, and it adds land to it. DevCo has a lot of money, but they don't have $2.8 million to start paving, putting sewer and water in. So they are asking for a way to finance that in a blighted and substandard area. I would echo everything that Gary has said. There is a proposed subdivision in there, but it is not the final subdivision. The reason is every time Gary gets someone in, they will tell him how much dirt they want for their project. So you can expect sequential subdivision as this goes forward. But been in the same game that Gary has, and yeah, you can't show a pasture or a cornfield until somebody's going to put millions of dollars in your community, that that's an industrial site. You have to have all of the pieces in there so they can drive up and have it go. Be glad to answer any questions. It won't necessarily, let me back up. The plan is so that they put infrastructure in as the money comes in. So if they get a big one in, they'll put in more infrastructure so they can do it sequentially. If they get someone in with a mom and pop shop, that's not going to pay for $2.8 million worth of infrastructure. So it would be sequential. That's about it. I would like to tell you that I've been in 80 some towns across the state, and your professional staff here is among the top 3 or 4 in the state in the way they do their work. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the audience? Do you have any questions for people who have spoken?
We need to close the public hearing first.
If you have questions, ask them first.
No questions. Now I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I move we close the public hearing.
Moved by Winder, seconded by Bain to close the public hearing. Any comments? Clicker vote as soon as she gets it up. There you go. Public hearing is closed. Okay, discussion amongst yourselves.
Nice work filling that up out there.
I would agree. I would agree.
That doesn't get said enough.
I move to approve the resolution recommending approval of the City of North Platte amended redevelopment plan for a portion of the Twin Rivers Industrial Park redevelopment project and approval of related actions.
Motion by Winder, second by, you need to do this more often. By Forbes. Any discussion? If not, click or vote. We'll try that again.
We'll do a new one.
There you go. And motion carries. Okay. We okay without a break?
We gotta get
All right.
Nelson to his volleyball game.
Yeah. Oh, we're not taking a break then.
He's gonna have to start stretching soon.
We are on item number 5, public hearing on file numbers Z 22-001, discuss and consider action on an application by the North Platte Area Chamber and Development Corporation purchaser and the City of North Platte owner to rezone certain lands from an A1 transitional agriculture district to an R2 dwelling district on property located on the corner of North Adams Avenue, West 17th Street, on property described as a tract of land in the southeast quarter of Section 29, Township 14 North, Range 30, west of the 6th Prime Meridian, Lincoln County, Nebraska, more particularly described as what is in your page as in front of you. Okay.
Sorry, and this does coincide with the housing redevelopment plan that was just recommended to be sent on. In order to rezone a property, it's the duty of the Planning Commission to ensure the rezoning is in conformance with the current comprehensive plan. The applicants are requesting the zone change to allow for development of the 51-lot residential subdivision. The goals is for the area to accommodate modular or stick-built homes. New housing construction should be an upgrade to the area and attractive to neighbors. Housing is critical through the community, and this development will provide housing options to existing and new families in the area. Again, there is a location map. The proposed rezoning is attached along with a copy of the portion of the comprehensive land use map 2011. Planning staff has no objections to the rezoning. The rezoning is in conformance with the City of North Platte Comprehensive Plan 2011 land use map. The area is located in close proximity to other single-family homes, schools, and commercial businesses. Rezoning the area to residential would not be detrimental to neighboring property owners and is a good location for additional residential development. This is a public hearing.
Okay,
Go ahead.
before I ask people to come up, I want to make something clear and want to make sure I'm clear on it. R2 is modular or stick-built homes. It is not mobile homes.
Correct. R2 is a residential district. It can accommodate modular, stick-built, things on permanent foundations, not mobile home by definition.
Is modular, the term modular being used in conjunction with manufactured?
Modular and manufactured, we've had this discussion quite a bit at city council level. There is a difference. Manufactured has the metal frame underneath, generally is not attached to a permanent foundation. So this would not be, modular would not be the same as a manufactured home. Modular would be more of like a Wardcraft home that is brought in multiple sections and placed on a permanent foundation. Does that
But
make
there are
sense?
several manufactured homes throughout the community that are on permanent foundations.
And those could probably accommodate in this area. That's not the goal, but the goal again is the 1,300 to 1,400 square feet, $250,000 homes. So.
Okay. I was unclear on that or wanted to make
No,
sure.
In no way, shape, or form would it be a mobile.
Right, mobile homes would not
But it
be.
could be a manufactured
Could
home,
be a
because
manufactured.
modulars and manufactureds roll out of the
Right.
same factory in some scenarios.
Could be a manufactured, as long as it is on a permanent foundation, more than 18 foot wide, meets the 1,300 to 1,400 square foot criteria, yes.
Okay. Now, if there's anyone who would like to speak, please come forward. Identify yourselves, give us your address.
Gary Pearson, President, North Platte Chamber and Development. 502 South Dewey. Just feel the R2 zoning gives us the flexibility to recruit housing developers to this particular location, as well as it is compatible with a lot of the adjacent neighborhoods that have a similar type of zoning. So that's why we're requesting.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Any questions for any? I would entertain a motion to close public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Jet moved, Winder seconded to close public hearing. Any comments? If not, as soon as it comes up, we can vote. And the public hearing is closed. Any discussion?
I just think that should be probably noted that they're the manufactured modular deal. Because without saying manufactured, you're limiting it to modular. So,
And that will fit in an R2 dwelling district, that is true. The redeveloper, it was their intent of not having manufactured homes. But yes, if somebody else were to purchase it, they could put manufactured. Because that is the zoning.
Well, apologies to the people whose houses I'm going to hit on number 2 from the golf course, because I shank a lot of balls. I move to approve file number Z22-001 to rezone certain lands from an A1 transitional agricultural district to an R2 dwelling district located at the corner of West 17th and North Adams Avenue, as shown on the attached map.
Second.
Moved by Fudge, seconded by Winder. Discussion? Okay. Motion carries. Item number 6, discussion of upcoming zoning map and zoning regulation amendments. Thank you, Nelson.
All I'm gonna say on this item was I kept it on here, in case we did have some time, but since it's already 7:30, we will just forget that, but we will have more discussion on upcoming rezoning at the next planning commission meeting.
Thank you.
That-
Number 7, any other old business? Any new business? Meeting adjourned. And thank you, everyone.
Somebody threw it to you. Did you, were you the one that threw that?
I did. I got it out of this drawer. Thank you, Gary. Appreciate your hard work on this.
Is this junk yours or mine?
Tearing the backs off of chairs and like when you walk in. What's that about?
This is the agenda.